when America and Israel launched this war, Operation Epic Fury, that happened from Saturday morning, they were not expecting Iran to behave almost like a regional guerrilla army, a regional disruptor which is now taking down the entire Middle East with it in this conflict. Iran has now attacked Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman. These are all American allies. These are American allied countries whose main security guarantor is the United States, and their security has been compromised in these last 2 days. They will now likely put pressure on President Trump and his administration and ask him to end this war. The question is, how will this end? Earlier today, Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of War, said America did not start this war. Quite curiously, he said that, but America will decide how this war will end. The question is, how will it end? What is the off-ramp that Trump is offering the Iranians? For Trump, he already has his big political victory. He has removed, as he says, cut off the head of the snake, the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's been killed. But what about Iran? What is the off-ramp for Iran? Will Iran relent? Ali Larijani, who seems to be the man in charge, the man who's a close confidant of Ali Khamenei and also the head of the Iranian National Security Council, he has said there is no question of talking to America, directly contradicting something that Trump said last night, that the Iranians are willing to talk. The big question is, what will give? What is the off-ramp, and when and how will this war end? It's now become a full-blown regional conflict. I want to bring you up to speed with what the Iranians have done. Yesterday, they targeted, among other places, the Gulf Arab countries. They hit Qatar, they hit the United Arab Emirates, they also hit Bahrain. Today, the big story was the Ras Tanura oil field by Aramco, the world's largest oil refiner, that was hit in Saudi Arabia. Production was temporarily halted there, but this is a big signal by Iran that they're going to drag the entire region down with them in this conflict. Ras Tanura is one of the largest oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, of the largest oil producer, refiner in the world, I must say, Aramco. In Kuwait, and this was a dramatic moment in this conflict that we've seen in the last 48 hours. You can see the picture in the far bottom corner of your screen. An American F-15 catching fire, inflamed, and then going down. You can see that at least in this picture you can see one, but now the American officials have confirmed that at least 3 F-15s have been downed. They're claiming it's by Kuwaiti air defense systems that mistakenly fired on them, but the Iranians are claiming otherwise. Also, you can see black smoke billowing out from the U.S. Embassy compound in Kuwait. It has now been temporarily shut down. The Americans have also temporarily halted visa processing in Pakistan as well as in other countries. There you go. You can see the black smoke that's billowing up from the American Embassy compound in Kuwait. It was attacked. The premises was attacked. They've now put a temporary cessation of visa processing in that embassy building. Also, Oman, which was a key player because it was a mediator up until last week between America and Iran. Oman had mediated 3 rounds of talks, 2 in Geneva and 1 in Muscat, and Oman was hit as well. There was a major oil tanker that was hit just off the coast of Oman. The Iranians claim as many as 9 tankers, 9 ships, commercial ships, have been hit off the coast of the Persian Gulf, in fact. And they are saying that the Strait of Hormuz is now not open for business. That's the biggest leverage that Iran has. It can cut off 20% of the world's oil supply. This has important caveats for India as well. About 50% of India's oil supplies ply through the Strait of Hormuz. And if Iran cuts off the Strait of Hormuz, that is going to be bad news, not just for India, but for the wider region as well. I want to play out first what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, said. And famously, or infamously, you can say, he said that it's not America that started. All right, we're getting live shots of Benjamin Netanyahu. I think he's gone to Beit Shemesh, is my guess. We're waiting for where this location is. These are live shots of Benjamin Netanyahu. It again clarifies all of that speculation from earlier today. The Iranians had claimed that they had hit the compound where he's staying, but now we have live pictures of the Israeli Prime Minister in Beit Shemesh, which was just west of Jerusalem, which was hit yesterday, and 9 people have died in Beit Shemesh. Let's try and see if we can get Sanjay Suri, our colleague, who's there live for us. He was there earlier today. He went to Beit Shemesh. They're claiming that this was an Iranian ballistic missile that killed at least 9 Israeli citizens. So you can see the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu having gone inside that building. Remember, there was speculation earlier today. The Iranians had claimed that they had hit a compound that was housing the Israeli Prime Minister, but now he seems hale and hearty and healthy and fine, and he's made his first public appearance to the public. He's come out there and he has shown that he's visiting those who are ailing and, of course, visiting the family members of those who died in that killing in Beit Shemesh. Let me now play out some of the reactions from Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, who spoke about an hour ago, giving details of Operation Epic Fury. The important thing is, he has said that America will decide how and when to end this war.
The Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury, the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history. The joint force, our warriors on the front lines. This is your moment. This is the generational turning point America has waited for since 1979, and since the rudderless wars of hubris, my generation, our generation, endured. Don't listen to the noise. Just stay focused. The former regime had every chance to make a peaceful and sensible deal. But Tehran was not negotiating. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes.
Now, here's the most important and pressing thing before Iran. The killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, by the American and Israeli strikes throws the survival of the theocratic regime in Iran into jeopardy. It's going to be hard to predict who might succeed him. There is now an interim committee of 3 members, which includes the president, Masoud Pezeshkian, and 2 others who are part of that committee. But that's an interim committee. So who after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? Remember, he had an iron grip on that country for the better part of the last 40 years almost. One of the possible names that's being talked about is Mujtaba Khamenei. He's the second son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Again, his whereabouts are not known. There are some reports suggesting that he too perished in that airstrike that was undertaken by the Americans and the Israelis, but his whereabouts are currently unknown. He is a strong cleric, but the problem is Iran's system, the theocratic system, does not look favorably towards what is called the hereditary system of transferring power from father to son. The father-to-son succession is frowned upon in the Shia Muslim clerical establishment, and that is a problem as far as Mujtaba Khamenei is concerned. Then there is the lesser-known figure, but certainly in the last 24 hours he's become an internationally known figure, the second gentleman here, Ayatollah Ali Raza Arafi. He's an established cleric. He's got a track record in government institutions. He's run a very famous university in Qom. He's also a confidant of the former Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He, in fact, currently serves as the deputy chairman of the Assembly of Experts. That is the body of 88 members who will decide who the next Supreme Leader will be. He's also a member of the powerful Guardian Council, which vets election candidates and laws that are passed by the Iranian parliament. And currently, Ayatollah Arafi is part of that 3-member interim committee along with President Pezeshkian, as well as this 3rd member who we're now going to bring up now, Ayatollah Ghulam Hussein Mohseni Ejai. His is another name that's doing the rounds. He's a senior Iranian cleric. He currently heads the judiciary wing of the Islamic Republic. He's the topmost figurehead in the judiciary wing of the Islamic Republic. He previously served as Minister of Intelligence. He too is part of that 3-member temporary committee that is running Iran right now. And the 4th and final name is Hojat Islam Mohsin Komi, who's again a close advisor to the late leader Khamenei. He's seen as a trusted insider. Supporters believe his proximity to the late leader could help maintain a degree of continuity and stability during this turbulent transition. So, how will this story in Iran play out? Because this has now become a wider regional war. Iran has managed to hit, willingly or otherwise, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates. All of America's regional Gulf Arab allies have been hit, and it's not a pretty picture. Let's try and bring our guests into focus. General retired BP Malik is former Chief of Army Staff, Indian Army. Here in our studios, Sanjay Kumar Verma is former diplomat. Adrian Fontanelles is a military analyst and historian. Shani Moore is a lecturer at the Reichman University in Israel. Michael Rubin is a senior fellow with the American Enterprise Institute, former member of the Pentagon. Thank you very much. General Malik, let me start with you first. So the objective, as was laid out by President Trump when this Operation Epic Fury began, was regime change. He has got the top of the head, which is the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has been decapitated. Along with him, a series of military and political leaders of Iran have been eliminated. How does this story, how does this war end? Will Trump now stop and claim victory, or is this going to go on for a substantial amount of time?
Thank you, Zaka. Thank you for getting me on your panel. I think that we have underestimated Iran's capacity to fight back. Now, the fact is that the present administration in Iran has been there for the last 45 years. And they have their establishment in different layers, politically as well as militarily also. And now, when we talk of decapitation, of course, the US has succeeded in that very quickly. But then decapitation can result in a regime change in a small country, which is not so stable itself. It cannot work, I believe, in a large country where the administration or the government has been in power for quite some time, and it has a fair amount of following in that country. My belief is that while Iran is definitely weak as far as its hardware is concerned, in comparison with USA, Israel, and other countries, which are now also involved in this. But it does have important moral capacity, human capacity, because of its because of its ancient civilization, because of the religion that they are following, all of them so intensely. So I have a feeling that for some time now, for the next few days also, we might see intensification and fairing up of this war for some more time before anybody tries to, before Iranian even think of throwing in the towel. They're not going to do it so soon. Also, as they say in Hindi, they also are believing in ke hum dubenge, to sanam hum tumko bhi leke dubenge. And that is apparently going to be the kind of message that they are sending it to the Gulf countries whom they have already hit, and they have enlarged the war campaign.
So let me bring in Ambassador Sanjay Kumar Verma here. So one of the critical things, and no one quite factored this in, is Iran hitting civilian as well as military targets in these Gulf Arab countries. Today, an oil refinery, one of the biggest in the world and certainly in that region, has been hit by the Iranians. They've also brought down, they claim, 3 American F-15s. They've also hit oil tankers. They claim, again, 9 oil tankers have been hit off the Strait of Hormuz. The fact that all of these Gulf Arab countries are being hit, and the security guarantor for all of these countries is America, that's not going to go down well with these countries.
That's true, but at the same time, we look at the chronology and how this conflict or hostility actually started. All these countries had a bit of role to play. And therefore, the strategic targets, as you mentioned, the petroleum manufacturing facility or the ships or any other such asset which is strategic in nature, other than the civilian targets. Civilian targets are wrong, absolutely, bluntly wrong. But like any other war, all other strategic targets are game.
But the fact that America is the guarantor for all of these countries, and we've seen there have been numerous wars in the Middle East, but I can't remember the last time, even during the Gulf War back in 1991, yes, certain individual countries were affected, but this kind of regional escalation. One of our guests earlier today said, Adrian Fontanelles, that this is like a guerrilla army. The Iranians are fighting like a guerrilla army. They're bringing down, and to paraphrase what General Malik was saying, if we go down, we bring the whole house down. That's what the Iranians are doing. But how sustainable is this, Adrian?
It
Sorry.
All right.
This is the third day of the Operation Roaring Lion, the operation the Israeli army and the state of Israel set out to, with our great friends, the United States of America and President Trump, to thwart existential threats to Israel and great threats to America and the entire world. When I stand here in a place that was bombarded by the terrorists in Tehran against innocent civilians, you see the difference. The tyrants of Tehran target civilians. We target the tyrants of Tehran to protect civilians. I've said for many years that they threaten not only Israel and not only America. They chant death to Israel, death to America. That's their ultimate target. But I said that they would also target those in between, that they would target Europe. They did. And if this regime, this terrorist regime of the kind we've never seen in the world, if they get nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them, ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, they will threaten all of humanity. So we set out to protect ourselves, but in so doing, we protect many others. And I want to say special thanks to our great friend and a great leader of the world, Donald Trump, for joining us in this crucial effort to save the world. Thank you.
Each day, so this war is.
Thank you. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, visiting Beit Shemesh, just west of Jerusalem, where 9 Israeli citizens have been killed. Of course, this also puts to rest all that speculation about his own fate. The Iranians had claimed that they'd hit a compound housing the Prime Minister, but he seems healthy and fine. Yes, Adrian, you were making a point.
Yes, you asked me about the ability to of the IRGC to continue at this pace. Of course, no one can make precise predictions, but what is certain is they equipped themselves and they
Thank you very much.
Standing with Israel, standing for the truth, and for the enormous friendship of the people of India. They are much admired and loved in Israel, and I won't get into the details of the conversation, but I've spoken to him and I've spoken to many other leaders in the region and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So Prime Minister Netanyahu thanking Prime Minister Modi and the people of India for standing by Israel. Remember, Prime Minister Modi was just there just a few days ago, and right after he left is when this operation began. Just a day or so after he left is when that operation began. So Prime Minister Netanyahu thanking Prime Minister Modi and the Indian people. Yes, Adrian, you were making the point that the Iranians are hitting the wider region because that will send out a resonant message to America, to Washington.
And yes, and I also see it in a term of diplomatic leverage. I mean, they were backed against the wall by the American and Israeli diktats. So if they can inflict enough damage, then they can regain some leverage to negotiate too. Mm-hmm. But at first, they need to show that they can be an hindrance, and therefore that the American has an interest to negotiate with them and to make some concessions with them, because when the war began, there is none. Abandon nuclear program, regime change, dismantle your ballistic arsenal, which means being defenseless from their perspective. This is unacceptable from their point of view. Therefore, they need to negotiate in a condition where there is something to negotiate in this regard.
Yeah. Shani Moore, last night President Trump said the Iranians have expressed an interest in negotiating. Today, Ali Larijani, who's practically the most important man in Iran right now, he says there's no question of negotiating with the Americans. How far can they go? Continuing like this, dragging in the entire region, they are, as one of our guests earlier said, behaving almost like a guerrilla army.
They can probably go pretty far. I suspect that if there is a ceasefire in this war, it'll actually be initiated by the United States rather than by the Iranians. I don't think that the US or Israel are going to bring the Iranians to a point of complete defeat. And I think that that's also relevant to the question that you asked the previous guests about regime change. The regime change is a major goal or an indirect goal of this operation. It's one of the 4 big issues that the U.S. was pursuing before this operation even began, along with the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program, and Iran's regional proxies. As far as the United States is concerned, and to a certain extent Israel as well, there's no intention of actually affecting that regime change directly by putting any of their forces on the ground. It's entirely up to the Iranian people or some kind of internal opposition or even something inside the regime itself to affect itself. That means that the U.S. can, tomorrow, the next day, in a week, say that it's met its objectives, end the war, having made, from its perspective, real progress on the first 3 issues, or certainly on the first 2, the nuclear program, the ballistic
Mr.
program.
Moore, just give me one second. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I want to go across to Rahul Shivshankar, who has more details on what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said. He has thanked Prime Minister Modi for his support and the support of the Indian people. Yes, Rahul.
Yeah, thanks indeed, Zaka. We're getting news that Netanyahu, who was addressing his nation from that site that was devastated a little earlier, has come out and also thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for standing with Israel in this hour of need. Now, this feeds back into, of course, the visit that the Prime Minister undertook a few days ago to Israel. In fact, on pretty much a day or 2 before the strikes took place on Iran, the decapitation strikes, which really euphemism for the preemptive strikes there. But what we're also being told is that this particular issue might have then come up for discussion. That is what we're being told, and that the entire scenario was discussed. And if you remember, the Prime Minister himself had said that in his speech before the Knesset, he had come out and said that India backs Israel's right to defend itself. If you remember that statement that was made, which was received with wide applause, which was seen back here in India as some sort of an affirmation of Israel's goals to perhaps even participate in strikes against Iran alongside US President Donald Trump. And that's exactly how things have actually played out. And Netanyahu coming out and saying that I'm grateful for the Indian Prime Minister's support, for standing with us, which will only add to the impression that India has picked sides in this contest. Remember, that's the principal accusation that is being made against Prime Minister Modi here in India by the opposition and by other critics of his administration. So quite clearly, there is now going to be an obvious political implication drawn from these statements, and it could lead to a little bit of hot water being poured over the stand that has been taken by India so far. Remember, India has not condemned either Israel or the Americans for taking action against Iran, and the kind of action that we've seen amounted really not to a preemptive strike, but much more than that. And it's turning out that there was an inclination from the very beginning to undertake some sort of a regime change. So if that's really the case, as the Congress points out, it goes against various statutes of the Indian Constitution. Of course, all of this is politics, it's also optics, it's symbolism, because the government has come back and said at various points in time that very few countries have actually condemned the United States and Israel. In fact, the leading economies of the world, the developed powers, have all either kept quiet or they have backed both America and Israel for the action it has taken. So that's really the shape of things to come. We're expecting a bite very soon. We can play that out.
All right, let's in fact play out what Benjamin Netanyahu said on Prime Minister Modi and his support. In fact, they also spoke just yesterday on the phone right after the news came out of Israel carrying out those preemptive strikes and killing Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu said.
Prime Minister, you spoke to the Indian Prime Minister.
Yes, I did.
Yes. Can you say a word?
Yes, I spoke.
How was the meeting, sir?
I spoke to our great friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I spoke to him at length yesterday. Thank him for his standing with Israel, standing for the truth, and for the enormous friendship of the people of India. They are much admired and loved in Israel, and I won't get into the details of the conversation, but I've spoken to him and I've spoken to many other leaders in the region and beyond. Thank you.
All right, I want to go back to our guests, and Michael Rubin from the American Enterprise Institute is also joining us. Iran is striking not just at Israel or at American bases, it's also dragging the whole region down, the assets of all of those countries in the Gulf Arab world. How do you think that's going to fare? Because these are all American allies. Will they not put pressure on Trump to stop this war and wind it up quickly?
Well, first of all, most of the countries which have been hit before, either by Iran or by Iranian proxies. But to the point of your question, I think Iran has made a grave mistake. Many of the Gulf Arab states were on the fence and were seeking neutrality. By striking at them, the Gulf Cooperation Council has stated, quite frankly, that they no longer are necessarily going to remain neutral, and they might actually join this conflict against what remains of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
The Secretary of War said some time back that America did not start this war, but America will decide how they're going to end that. How will this end? What is the end game here?
Look, one of the problems the United States has across administrations now is strategic patience. In the age of Twitter and TikTok, too often the president and frankly the American public tend to lose their patience, and that's something that leads our enemies to seek to outlast us. We saw that with the Taliban. We saw that with the Houthis. Now, when it comes to the Islamic Republic of Iran, Trump has said privately to his people that he has a 40-day plan. He has also said that he's ahead of schedule with his 40-day plan, and indeed, we were more successful than many Americans expected at being able to take out Iran's top leadership because we didn't expect them all to be having breakfast with each other the first day. That said, the big question remains, what comes next? And is it possible to have a smooth transition in Iran, since Trump has made regime change his stated goal, without having any sort of boots on the ground?
Okay, I also want to show why this is important, hugely consequential and important for India, because remember, the Strait of Hormuz controls, or at least the flow of about 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. In India's case, it is much more. The dependence on the Strait of Hormuz is much more. The Iranians have been claiming that in the last 48 hours, they have hit as many as 9 oil tankers. Some of them have been hit off Bahrain, some of them have been hit off Oman. Basically, they're demonstrating to this region and to the rest of the world that they are able to shut off this critical waterway, which will have consequences not just for India. India is a massive importer of energy. So is China. China, in fact, is the second largest importer of energy in the world. So clearly, this is something that the Iranians have as leverage, and they're demonstrating this leverage over the last 48 hours. The critical question also for India is this. India has now sort of diversified its oil trade much more with the Gulf Arab countries. Yes, the dependencies on Russia are still there, but it has cut off the flow of Russian oil because of those Trump-imposed sanctions. If you look at all of these Gulf Arab countries, the amount of energy that India imports from these countries, this is 24-25, 8.5% almost from the UAE. This is trade, just not just oil trade, this is overall trade. More than 3.5% with Saudi Arabia, 2.78% with Iraq, 1.22% with Qatar, about 0.1% with Bahrain, 0.8% with Kuwait, and about 0.9%, almost 2% with Oman. So that's total 18%. So one fifth of India's trade is with these GCC countries as they are known. And if they are all going to be attacked, and if there is this degree of uncertainty, this whole clouds of war hanging around that region, that is a big concern for India as well. So let me ask General Malik about that. Clearly India has skin in the game. You heard what Prime Minister Netanyahu said, thanking Prime Minister Modi. In fact, Prime Minister Modi was there on Thursday. He left Thursday evening. Saturday morning is when this attack began. And there is some criticism that India has picked a side. India has not condemned this attack. How would you speak to that concern and juxtapose that with what I just outlined, how much India is dependent on the oil trade that passes through the Strait of Hormuz?
Firstly, Zaka, I'm not too sure whether Prime Minister of Israel has been able to convey the kind of statement that has been made by Prime Minister of our country in India. I heard Prime Minister Modi's statement, and I don't think he really said that he is with one country and against the other country. He tried to keep himself neutral. That is my impression of what the Prime Minister, he made a statement in public. Now coming to the oil part of it. Yes, this 19% oil that passes through the states of Hormuz from different Gulf countries will hurt us to some extent. And there is no doubt about it. But I don't think it is going to be such a serious threat that we can go down in the next few days. I think we have got adequate capacity within our own country. We have storage capacity, as well as we have other sources open with Russia, with South America, and even USA itself. So while it may hurt, but it's not going to hurt us as far as our security concerns are concerned, or even the normal life, I would say, in India.
Ambassador Verma, I'll give you the final word. I've got less than a minute to close. But do you think that India should be worried, particularly on the oil trade? I believe the reserves that we have is about between 10 to 15 days.
India should be worried, and not only on the account of the supply of oil, but also the prices, which will go up in the market. It has already started happening. The premium which will go up for the shipping tankers. So all these things put together will make a difference of almost $20 per barrel as the import price for India, which will finally land up in the households.
And the fact that the Russian option is also now shut, that adds further pressure?
Absolutely, it does.
So what should India do? I mean, for example, Prime Minister Netanyahu has come out and said he's thanked Prime Minister Modi for his support, but India is stuck in a quagmire.
But India has always been looking for dialogue and diplomacy to take over, and that is the best option available, so that the hostilities, no more hostilities ceased, and therefore the interest of all the countries which are connected with this conflict are served.
Shanimor, in terms of how this whole thing plays out, President Trump, speaking to the New York Times last night, said he estimates it to end in 4 weeks. But given the attacks on these Gulf Arab countries, given the dependencies on important countries like India on this Gulf of the Straits of Hormuz, do you see this lasting for 4 weeks? And also Trump's own lack of propensity for long-drawn wars.
Yeah, I don't think that the U.S. is going to be wanting to take this until the moment of some kind of regime change, particularly because, as I was saying earlier, neither the U.S. nor Israel can actually affect it on its own. The part that's missing from their plans is the internal Iranian politics. To that end, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, even earlier than we think, the U.S. With Israel announced some kind of unilateral ceasefire. They can always go back in after 48 hours. What's important for them is that they've already degraded the nuclear and ballistic capabilities. As of today, they're already degrading at least part of the regional proxies, and they've been hitting in the last 24 hours targets that are associated with the Basij and the Revolutionary Guards, so that if a new protest movement takes place in Iran, it'll be much harder for the regime to repress it fully as it did in January. Failing that, a unilateral ceasefire can unilaterally be ended, and they can go back in.
Michael Rubin, again, President Trump, when he was speaking to the American press, said he has 3 choices. He's not named any of those choices, but ultimately it's going to be up to the people of Iran to decide who will be the next supreme leader and so on. But has he widened the fault lines within Iran? He has asked for the people of Iran to come out and take over their government. No one's come out in the last 48 hours. If anyone's come out, they've come out to mourn the death of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So under what confidence is Trump saying that whoever is America's choice, eventually one of these 3, will helm Iran in the future, or at least will be more pliable to American interests?
I believe Trump is going to try. Look, when we talk about who the United States or Israel has killed with its bombs and its drones, we can look at people like not only Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and his son Mujtaba and his grandson, but we can also look at people like former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. But the real question is, who hasn't been struck? I mean, Hassan Rouhani, Mohammad Khatami, both former presidents, also the National Security Council chief, Ali Larijani. Were they simply on the B list for assassination, or is there a reason we have bypassed them? And that leads to this belief that there could be some sort of Delcy Rodriguez situation being played out. And remember that the Qataris were mediators with Delcy Rodriguez's brother and the United States ahead of the Venezuela operation. Have they been talking to Ali Larijani? That said, I don't think that any of these three would be able to hold the country together. They all represent the old regime. I don't think the Iranian people would stand for it.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about Reza Pahlavi, the former crown prince. But here's my question. Even if he has support, and he has at least 30% support in Iran, we believe, but even if he does have support and he returns to Iran, how do you keep him alive once he gets there? Look, you know that I worked in Iraq during the 2003 war, and the Central Intelligence Agency had inserted the son of an Ayatollah named Majid al-Khoi into Najaf in order to take control over the shrine of Imam Ali. And he was set upon as soon as he got to Najaf and hacked to death by people that turned out to be working for Muqtada al-Sadr. What's going to stop the ideologues in Iran from doing the same thing to Reza Pahlavi? This is where I'm afraid that President Trump has opened the Pandora's box.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. To all our guests who joined us on this special broadcast, and this is going to continue over the next few days and weeks. I don't think this war is ending anytime soon, particularly given that Iran is dragging in the wider region as well. So we will see how this plays out. But there is a fascinating inside story for how America and Israel plotted the end of a man who for the last 40 years has been chanting death to America and death to Israel.